just natural that the book sales come as a result of that. So that's where I started to make my money. The books that I sold within the first few months, how many? It probably was close to none, just because I was still learning the business. I was still new. The author that I worked with wasn't exactly a popular author per se. I remember she was my first author, so I was just more happy to get an author because I was just trying to say, hey, I'm a new company and I want to work with authors, and she was the first to respond, and it just kind of snowballed from there with her, which was great. But in terms of sales that came out of that relationship, I didn't really see anything. I saw book sales probably my third book in. That's when I saw an enormous amount, because I put out an author who, his name is Brian Gansman. I'm sure he wouldn't mind if I even said his name. And he put out a book called Defeat Wheat, which is how to deal with celiac disease and lose weight. And he just knows everybody. His main job is selling food to Walmart. Basically, he's one of those people that gets food companies into Walmart and gets them in front of Walmart. So he's been around food and exercise and all that his whole life. He just really believed in me. He believed in everything I was doing. He even flew me to Denver, Colorado, where he's from, for his book release, which was amazing. There's actually a YouTube video of me talking at his book release from that day. But he threw this huge bash. So it was like everybody and their mother bought his books. So that was my first bestseller, actually. So he became a bestseller pretty quick. And then from there, I started picking a lot of winners. You know, it's a lot of people that just was able to put out books that made me a decent amount of money, made my authors money. So it was just really about finding people like him, again, that had huge friendships, huge people in his life that supported him. And when I work with authors that have that kind of support, it's just natural that the book sales come as a result of that. So that's where I started to make my money. In order to figure out what could work and what not work for me, and to figure out like my screening process and the people that I did want to work with, it's definitely a process that I think anybody who does any type of business will tell you is something you learn from just doing it. It's experience. It's not something you can necessarily read a book about, although there have been many books written about like how to be a publisher and things like that. I would say that a lot of them do get it right, but I think the people, when they read those books, a lot of that just goes in one ear and out the other, because they're not ready for it. You have to experience certain things in this case, the book publishing industry. So for example, one of the things that I had to deal with right away was understanding, like royalty splits. You know, how do I determine what an author gets and what's fair to them? So I just sort of had a policy initially that, I'd only get $1 per book sold. Silly me, because that's ridiculous. Like, I should have gotten much more considering how much I was doing. But I just felt like I was doing the noble, heroic, chivalry thing, and here are authors, you can have all the money. That was great for my authors, not so great for me, because I had to hustle twice as hard to make the same amount of money as my authors were making. I think now it's more of an equal relationship. And if anything, I do make maybe a little bit more in some cases, but 9 times out of 10, the authors do make just a little bit more than me now, as opposed to a gigantic amount. That's something I had to learn over time. That's something I had to let go and realize I am running a business. If I want to stay afloat, I got to charge more. I got to, not charge more, but I have to take more in a royalty capacity. And actually, all my authors to this day have been totally cool with that. They understood. I didn't trust my authors to understand that. I should have. So that's something I learned over time that helped me be better at what I'm doing, help with my process, because that's another thing that goes back to screening. I want to know how understanding an author is. If I tell them, look, if you publish with us, we typically, will give you, like, if your book's $9.99 retail, costs us $6 to print the book, you may make $1.50 off your book. Because when all of our other fees are counted in, we're only making about $1.50 per book. If they're not cool with that, then I know maybe we're not going to be a good fit, because the last thing I want them to do is grovel about money or be upset. I want them to put out a book and be happy that they put out a book. That's a huge accomplishment. You're contributing something to the world that will never disappear, that will always be around, as long as we have books in the world. So in that sense, I'm looking for authors that have the bigger picture, and that's something too I had to learn over time, to look for authors that have that kind of mindset, same as me. That took a lot, a lot of time.